She always came back to the same stretch of shingle at dusk, not because it was beautiful. Pebbles here were a dull slate-grey, sorted by storms into long, patient ridges, and the sea never quite managed to sparkle. She came because this was the only place on the entire coast where the water still said her name the way her mother used to say it. Low, soft, 2 syllables stretched into 4. Elizabeth. Everyone else had shortened it years ago. Liz, Beth. Even the nurses at the care home had settled on Dear O Love after the 3rd time she failed to answer to anything else. But the sea remembered. She first noticed it when she was 9 and her mother was still alive. They would walk from the cottage down the steep concrete steps to the beach, her mother's hand cool and steady around hers. Even in summer, at the water's edge, her mother would crouch, cup a palmful of sea, let it drip through her fingers and whisper. Elizabeth Jane Harrow, born under a mackerel sky, future writer of very important letters. Then she'd laugh the small, cracked laugh of someone who already knew the letters would never be sent. After the funeral, Elizabeth kept coming alone. First weekly, then monthly. Then whenever the ache in her chest became louder than the ache in her knees. By 68, the visits were ritual. Same bench, the one with the missing slat. Same time, when the lighthouse at Dungeness first switched on. Same prayer, silent, wordless. Just her name repeated against the incoming tide until the sea gave it back. The doctors called it perseveration. Her daughter called it stubbornness. Elizabeth called it listening. One October evening, the tide came in wrong. Not higher, not rougher, just slower, as though each wave had to stop and remember what it was supposed to do next. She noticed, because the usual Hisanjush rhythm faltered. Instead, the water seemed to breathe. Long inhalations that drew the pebbles toward it, then exhalations that pushed them back. Gentle, deliberate, like someone stroking hair from a fevered forehead. She leaned forward. The surface was oil-slick Tom, except for one narrow path of ripples, moving straight toward her, against wind and current. When the ripples reached the shallows, they didn't break. They simply stopped, and the water spoke, not in words at first. In temperature, a pocket of warmth wrapped around her ankles. Summer water in October. Then memory arrived inside the warmth. Her at 4, sitting on the kitchen floor while her mother ironed pillowcases and sang The Water is Wide off key. Her at 12, hiding under the pier after the first boy she loved laughed at her poem. Her at 23, standing in the rain outside the registry office. Because he never showed. Her at 31, holding her own daughter for the first time and understanding suddenly, violently, that love could be a wound that never stopped bleeding. Each memory rode in on its own small wave, each one warmer than the last. She started crying without sound, the kind of crying that hurts your throat because you've forgotten how to make noise. Then the sea said her full name, now whispered. Spoken. Clear. Elizabeth Jane Harrow, and underneath it, very faintly, her mother's cracked laugh. She stood up too quickly. The bench creaked. Her knees complained. She didn't care. She waded in, not far, just to mid-calf. The water climbed her legs like cool silk stockings, then stopped exactly at the hem of her coat as though it knew where propriety ended. Another wave arrived. This one carried no memory whose pursuer, a gentle, insistent push against her chest, like arms encircling her from behind. She closed her eyes. The pressure became hand-small, cool, familiar. Her mother's hands. They rested on her shoulders the way they used to when Elizabeth couldn't sleep. Then they slid down her arms, turned her palms upward, placed something weightless inside them. When she opened her eyes, there was nothing there, but her hands were shaking, and the water was retreating. Not slowly, not reluctantly. It pulled back in one long, smooth motion, as though the entire English Channel had taken a single step backward. The exposed seabed glistened under the lighthouse beam-wet shingle, broken shells, a few lost fishing lures, and in the middle of it all, exactly where the last wave had withdrawn, a single sheet of paper. Sorun yellowed, ink blurred, but still legible. She walked out to it barefoot, coat dragging through the tide pools. It was one of her own letters, the one she wrote at 17 and never posted. The one that began, "Dear future me, if you are reading this, then I am old and the boy never came back and Mom is gone and I probably still talk to the sea like an idiot. Please tell me it gets better. Please tell me I stop waiting. Please tell me I learned how to be enough on my own." Underneath, in handwriting that was not hers netter, oldest Ediosuan had added 3 lines. "It doesn't get better, darling. It gets different, and you were always enough." The ink was black. Fountain pen, the same green schiefer her mother used for birthday cards. Elizabeth folded the letter carefully, tucked it inside her coat against her heart. The tide began returning. This time it moved normally ordinary waves, ordinity east, ordinity cold. But as the first small breaker touched her toes, it left behind one final gift. Her name, not spoken aloud, etched into the retreating foam in perfect cursive. Elizabeth Jane Harrow. Then, Gone. She stood there until the water reached her waist, until her coat floated around her like a black lily pad, until the lighthouse beam swept over her 3 more times. When she finally turned and walked back up the shingle, her footprints filled immediately behind her. No. Trace. Her daughter found her the next morning, sitting on the kitchen floor of the empty cottage, still damp, holding a sodden piece of paper she wouldn't let go of. The doctor came, then the ambulance, then the care home again. But every evening at dusk, whether the staff remembered to wheel her to the window or not, Elizabeth would lift her head toward the coast 6 miles away and smile the smallest, saddest smile. Because out there, under the mackerel sky, the sea was still practicing her name. Low. Soft. 2 syllables stretched into forever. And this time, she wasn't afraid to answer.